Welcome back to the show, my fam. All right, we're diving in. And all I can hear in my head is, oh my God, we're having a baby. Please tell me you know the song that I'm talking about from Instagram Reels and TikToks. It's like a trending song that people use a lot when they are announcing a pregnancy. Well, let's just get into it. I have no idea where this episode is going to go. I do not have notes. This is a real and raw conversation, but I'm really excited to announce if you haven't seen it, we're having a baby. So it is currently Friday of the week that it is. And we announced on social media on Tuesday of this week that we are expecting. Now, I will say this episode could potentially be triggering for you. I don't know the route that it's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to talk about my past losses, but also just if you're having like infertility challenges or anything like that, of course, this episode could be triggering. That is not what the episode is for, but I do want to let you know that this is the episode and what we're talking about. Okay, I kind of want to just start here. So, yes, I'm expecting, which is really exciting. Mike and I should have a little bundle of joy here in September, which is amazing and really surreal to say. I'm also 40. I had an ectopic pregnancy in September of 2022. I had a miscarriage in November of 2023. And so I'm triple high risk. I'm not only like a geriatric pregnancy, I'm triple high risk. And now that I'm over 40 as well, that's a thing too. So this has been a path. This has been a journey. And I know for so many of you listening, it's a journey for you too. It either has been or you're currently in it. And so just know, first and foremost, I am sending you so much love. And I know how difficult it can be. But I also just want to talk about some of my own experience here. And I think I'll probably end up doing some episodes about how we're like, people always say like baby proofing the business. I don't know that I'm baby proofing it, but like what we're doing to set up for my maternity leave and that type of stuff. Like I think we're going to talk about some of that stuff because it goes hand in hand. And as soon as we announced it this week, I was inundated in the best way possible with women who are just saying things like, first of all, you're an inspiration because I'm 42 and I still don't have kids, or I've been struggling, or I had an ectopic, or I had a miscarriage, or I've put the business first. And, those conversations that you have behind the scenes. And so while I'm not turning my page and business into like motherhood and pregnancy, I'm definitely going to have the conversation because this entire journey for me, I have felt like the conversation has just not had enough. And there's a lot of pieces to that, right? I felt very alone when I had the ectopic. I felt like that wasn't, really talked about, or just getting pregnant later, or putting the business first. Not that we intentionally put the business first. That's not at all what happened. But honestly, Mike and I met, I mean, I was 27, 28 when we met. So we were already a little bit older. And then by the time we got married, and then we ended up jumping, I think I was 31 or something. No, maybe it was a little bit later, but I decided to jump full time into entrepreneurship. That was in 2017, which would have been probably when we would have started to have a family. And at the time, we did have the conversation of like, should we just settle down? I mean, we were already in a house and had, corporate 9 to 5 jobs, but it was like, should we do that or should I go for my dreams type of thing? And so at the time, I chose, let me go for my dreams and move to New York City and build the health and fitness business and do all the things. And then I don't know, time just slips by, right? Like it just goes so fast. And definitely for us, the last 4 years since the world shut down and we left New York City, and then we did our V life for a year and a half. And then we are living in Arizona for 2 years. Like the 4 years just like went. And with the two losses that we had, I say back to back, but they were a year apart, there was a lot of space in between. So now here I am. You know what I mean? Like 40 years old. And it seems and feels like the business has gone first for a long time. That's not necessarily the case. But I also will say that I have watched so many incredible women over the years do both. But if I'm being honest, I saw a lot of like, I built the business first and then had kids, or I had kids first and then built the business. And it wasn't until recently, just in the last few years, and maybe it's my RAS, my reticular activating system, but it wasn't until the last few years that I started to really see some close friends of mine and mentors and peers and just people on social media, like really doing both at the same time. And I likely needed to see that. I likely needed to have that permission that I could do it, because I don't know that I really don't know, if I think back, like I can do a lot. I say that humbly, but like I get shit done. I can do a lot. I am extremely driven, like self-driven and motivated. I'm a really hard worker. I'm a super high achiever. And I know that I can do a lot, but for some reason, the doing both, the motherhood and the business at the same time, for whatever reason, it just felt impossible. I don't know. It felt like looking back, I'm like, I think I thought it was unattainable. I think I thought it had to be one or the other. And I haven't done it yet. I'm not there yet. I'm in the process, right? But I'm at a point where I'm also like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And what an interesting concept, because Mike and I have always lived our life in a both and way. Like, why can't it be both and? Why can't we do all the things and have all the things and experience all the things? Like, we're just in a both and world, and we joke, we have some friends, like I've put polls up for funsies on Instagram, like dogs or cats. And we have friends that live the same way we do, and they'll DM me and go, why not both? Right. And I'm like, touche. Why not both? So it's interesting to me that I had, and I don't know what story or narrative or where that came from. I can totally unpack that by myself. We don't need to do that right now, but it's just interesting that I'm like, I had this belief that like maybe I couldn't do both, or maybe that I couldn't do both at 100%. And maybe that was a fear, like an underlying fear that I had just we had put it off for a little while. We also just were like living our best lives, doing our V life and all this stuff. And we turned around and now we're 40. But what I want to talk about, like the direction I want to go in right now as well, is it's so interesting when you share parts of your life on social media, right? Like, this is always a question with our clients, like, how much should I share and how vulnerable do I have to be? And the answer is whatever you want. Like, there's no right answer. I've always shared a decent amount about my life. I think as a personal brand, I do think it has power. And I'm also just an open book. I don't mind talking about things. I always talk about the scab and the scar, right? So the ectopic pregnancy, I didn't share that for about I think 8 to 10 weeks after it happened. Like, I still really had a lot of healing to do emotionally. And then the miscarriage also ended up being about 8 weeks later. The irony of the miscarriage was I was actually pregnant with this pregnancy when I had announced that miscarriage. And Mike and I oscillated for a while between, do we want to share on social media about the pregnancy at all? I think after experiencing some losses, I think that's a totally normal feeling as well, where you're just like, I don't know, like after going through what we've been through, and whether it's like the like bad juju or heebie-jeebies, right? Where you're just kind of like, I don't know, is that like bad luck, like bad, not karma, but like, is it bad luck, right? Like if we share. Um, and I know for me, especially being older as well, I definitely wanted to get far past the 12-week mark. And then we got to 12 and I was like, yeah, no way. Like, we got to get to like 14, 16, 18 weeks. And then we got there and I was like, I want to get to like the 20-week mark, at which point you have your like big anatomy scan at 20 weeks. And so after that, it was like, okay, well, now we're getting closer. Like, maybe we'll share at like 24 weeks. And then the funny thing is, at that point, we really were going back and forth with like, maybe we just don't share at all. Like, maybe we just, surprise, the baby's here. And people are like, what? Like, you were pregnant? But if I'm being honest, one of the reasons why I really did want to share was because I was feeling a little bit alone in the process. Like, obviously, some of our really good friends knew. We had a bunch of friends here for my 40th birthday in end April. I was already showing. So it was like, everybody that was with us knew. I did ask them at the time, like, please don't put videos up on social media where I like clearly am looking pregnant. Like, we haven't announced anything yet. But for me, it was like, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I had alluded to a couple things on the podcast over the past couple months of like how things are changing behind the scenes. And like, I know the business is changing and I know there's things coming down the pipeline. And even it's interesting with our clients, like, we knew that we were going to be changing the date to one of our mastermind retreats for our elite girls, our elite mastermind girls. And we did tell them back in March at our retreat that we were going to be changing the date. We told them that we were expecting, and that was sooner than, other people in our life even knew. But I felt it was the most in integrity thing for us to do, because they signed on knowing these were the 3 dates of the retreats. And now we're changing it on them. That's not really fair. So, I had to be kind of picky choosy about where we talked about it. And then selfishly, I am very overwhelmed. And I use that word loosely, like almost jokingly. I'm not actually like losing sleep at night, but holy bananas, the things that we need to buy. And I don't know anything. Like, I love kids. I love babies. I was always a nanny. I was always a babysitter. I was a camp counselor. I was an elementary school teacher. Like, I'm good with kids. But the majority of our friends, like our close friends from high school and college and stuff, they all have 10-year-olds. Like they are done. They are so far done. Their youngest kids are like maybe 6, 7, 7 and 11, 12 and 9, stuff like that. So they're very disassociated with this stage of pregnancy and babies and stuff like that. And without sharing it on social, there was only a small handful of people that I was talking to. And interestingly, most of my friends in the entrepreneurial space are not parents, maybe either not yet or just not at all. And so it has felt like isolating in a weird way because I really want to post and be like, okay, what's the deal with the bassinets? Like, which strollers are better? I'm hearing all this stuff about this thing, all this stuff about that. Do we really need to buy this thing? And so there was like that pull of wanting to share so that I could have those conversations. But then equally, I really wanted to share because I want to be an example for other women and men who maybe felt the same way that I was feeling, which I can't even fully put my finger on. But it was like, could I really do both? And is there space for both? And if I do both, is one going to be worse than the other? Like, am I going to drop the shoe on one of them? Am I going to be like 60% on one or 40% on the other? What's that going to look like? And how hard is it really going to be? And so, and anyway, we're at 25 weeks right now, and we did share this week, and it felt really, really exciting and really liberating to share. And now I feel a sense of, there's definitely for me a sense of like, I could take a deep breath and have a little bit more freedom, not just because I speak at an event and people are taking Instagram pictures and I'm clearly pregnant, right? But because now I feel like I can open the dialogue and I can share with you what we are doing to get ready for maternity leave and what I am planning on. And maybe that's helpful for you in this season. Maybe it'll be helpful for you in the future. But that kind of always was the core essence of my business and my page. Like the whole point of my page, gosh, when I started 12 years ago, it was literally called, and this was a Facebook group at the time, it was called Jess's Journey, Stepping Out of Her Comfort Zone and Onto the Stage. Like that was the Facebook page. That was what it was called. And I was sharing my journey of competing and prepping for my first fitness and bikini competitions. And I was writing a blog weekly and sharing about my eating disorder and sharing about what I was learning and going to Tony Robbins events and giving you a summary of the event. Like it's always been come with me. It's never been look at me. And this is, I think, one of those things too, where I feel super connected to so many women because people assume sometimes that like it's all just cake. It's all just easy here. Like the business has been running. I've got the team. We make good money. We do the things. And so even my clients will say things like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you still get nervous or you still struggle with X, Y, and Z, or your engagement is down, from time to time, or you don't make sales every single day, or you still have a launch where there's a quiet day of sales. And so I feel like with this in particular, it just opens up an entirely different dimension of conversation that we can have, right? Because none of that's true. Like, I'm not untouchable. I still struggle, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, like whatever it might be. I'm just a person. And so my business still has ups and downs, and we have slow days and great days and big launches and smaller launches and good engagement and shitty engagement. Like, it's just, that's the way that it goes. And I think sometimes as the quote unquote gap has gotten bigger of where a lot of my clients are, or a lot of my audience members and community members are, and where my business is, people just make assumptions, right? And they just think that like, it doesn't happen to me. And so this journey of pregnancy and stepping into motherhood and this whole other chapter is just, I feel like an open door opportunity to just really reignite the conversations that we can have. And the last thing I'll say today, because there's so much I can talk about all of this, is, gosh, there's been so many things over the past 6 months that I've said to a couple girlfriends who knew the whole time, where I said, man, I wish people talked about this more. And so, and I'll expand on this on other podcast episodes, but a couple of the things that I wish people talked about more, and maybe they do, maybe it's just not in my world. The first one, and this one's like a goofy one, but so many people and women and Instagram and reels and TikToks and stories are always talking about how like hard it is for some women to not drink. I'm not a drinker, so to me, it's not hard, but there's even like trending TikTok reel audios that's like, I can't believe next month I'm going to have a baby and a margarita. Like it's, it's a thing. It's a societal thing. Society, drinking is a big thing. And so for me, I don't drink. It's very, very rare. I don't really care for it. I don't really enjoy it. So like 9 months of not drinking for me is just like literally nothing has changed. I've gone years without drinking. But what has been challenging, which you can give like giggle at me if you want to, there's a lot of limitations on like physical activity that you're allowed to do. So obviously I'm still working out every day and I'm super grateful for it. But there have been things where we took our elite mastermind girls zip lining and I wasn't allowed to go, or horseback riding and you're not allowed to go, and ice skating. And unless you're like a proficient ice skater, same thing with like, dirt, I don't know, like riding bikes and stuff, unless you like know you're not going to fall, which I am not a good ice skater. They're just activities that you can't do, and I know it sounds crazy because it's like, geez, Jess, how often do you go skydiving, but there have just been more times over the last 6 months, like my brother and sister-in-law just a couple of weeks ago wanted to go to an amusement park for my brother's birthday, one of the like roller coasters and all that. And I'm like, I could go, but I can't ride any of those rides with you. Like, I'm going to end up holding the purses all day. And like, that's just not fun, like I love adventure. I love stuff like that. Like, I love doing that. And I'm like, why does nobody talk about that? Like, it's way worse for me. I'm like, screw the margarita. I want to go skydiving. So that's one of the things that's just like a goofy thing. But what I'll talk about a little bit more seriously, because this really was a challenge for me, has been the body changes. And obviously women talk about it and it's a thing. But for me specifically, it was weeks like 14, 15-ish until like maybe 15 until like 18, 19-ish, 20, like 14 to 20, 15 to 20. And gosh, like business, it was the messy middle. And I wasn't actively showing, like it wasn't so obvious that I was pregnant. And it was a really difficult time for me. And I have a long history of eating disorders, or a eating disorder, and body image issues for sure that I'm very aware of, hyper aware of. And I've done so much work over the last 20 years. And I don't actually I'm not struggling with the bump. Like now I have a bump. It was the in between. And it was really hard for me. And I had reached out to a couple different girlfriends who I know either had like really strict body image stuff going on, or they had previous eating disorders, or just like they're in the public eye. And a couple of them, they're in the public eye in the fitness industry where there's like a really high standard. And I had reached out to a few of them during that time. And one of them had asked me kind of clarifying questions, poking around, just being like, is it because you're worried what other people think? Like, oh my gosh, did she gain weight? Does she look fat? Or is it because of how you are just feeling and perceiving yourself? And for me, it was nothing external. It was a totally internal thing where it was the way that I was seeing myself. And to feel that out of control, and obviously for good reason, like I'm so grateful. What my body's doing is so amazing. And this is the goal. This is what we wanted, right? And I had these losses and now this is happening. But it doesn't change. It didn't change for me. Like I was waking up and getting bigger, like the belly was growing, but I couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't like, oh, well, I know how to fix this. I'm going to change my diet tomorrow. I'm going to tighten this thing up over here. I'm going to change the workout over there. I'm going to do extra HIIT cardio, or I'm going to do more weightlifting. I'm going to increase my weights. And my whole life, that's what it's been. Literally coming from that industry. Like I was a trainer for 18 years. I have a like pre-physical therapy degree, exercise physiology degree. That's the place that I came from. And so to feel so out of control, like I can't change this, not that I want to, but I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. It was just like, it was really hard for me to see. And it was those few weeks where like clothing wasn't really fitting, but maternity clothing still isn't really fitting for me yet, like full on maternity clothing. So I was in this weird space, the messy middle of like, great, my jeans don't fit and I can put one of those extenders or like hair ties on, but my style is a huge part of my identity. And I wear mostly crop tops. And so now it's like, okay, you have this expander thing on your jeans and now you want to wear a crop top, like that looks weird. So then I kind of felt that I had to change my style. And so I was wearing longer shirts all of a sudden. And so I just really started to lose myself. I felt like I was losing myself and my identity and my fashion and my body. And I have talked to so many women behind the scenes who say the same thing, where it's like, from the moment you get pregnant, everything starts to change. But for your male partner, that might not be the case. Or even your female partner, if they're not the one who is physically actively pregnant, that might not be the case. And they might not feel it. the same way or experience it the same way until they're holding the baby. But for me, it's like, the second you get pregnant, the chemicals and the hormones and your brain starts to change, like everything just starts to change. And so it's this weird, like quiet storm that's going on in my experience, because externally everything's normal, especially when you're not showing and people don't know. But internally you're like, oh my God, everything's changing. And like, what about bassinets? And should I have a shower? And what are we going to name this thing? And when's it coming? And is it a boy or a girl? And are we going to find out? Like all this stuff that comes up. And so it's been really interesting to navigate what's going on behind the scenes, and then the business, um, morning sickness, and hosting DBE live. Oh my goodness. I only threw up once the entire first trimester, but golly, like I was all day sickness every day, like just straight nausea every day. And that was interesting too, because I was literally only eating carbs, and I don't normally eat carbs. Not like carbs are bad. I eat carbs. I eat potatoes and rice and stuff like that, but I'm not like a bread eater. And I couldn't tell you the last time I had cereal. The first trimester, I ate bread, bagels, I mean, all gluten-free, but bread, bagels, potatoes, English muffins, rice, and cereal. That's literally all I ate. Like I did not eat a vegetable for 3 months. And that was like kind of a mind screw too, where like I felt so guilty and disappointed in myself, like that I couldn't handle eating a vegetable, frustrated because I'm like, I want the best nutrients for this baby. I also care a lot about eating healthy. It was just such a weird, but like all I could get down, all I could stomach, all I could eat, all I could look at were like these different types of carbs. And the women that I spoke to, or my doctors, would say the same thing. It's like, it's okay. It's temporary. Like you're doing the best that you can. But then to then also see after the first trimester, all of a sudden the belly starts to come in. My brain went to like, I did this. Did I do this to myself? Right. Thinking like it's weight gain, not like baby growing, where you're like, oh my gosh, I ate carbs and all this stuff for 3 months, and now I'm growing a belly. Oh my gosh, I did this, which is crazy, but like, it's not crazy at all. And that's why I want to have this conversation. So anyway, I digress. I could go on and on and on. I'll do more episodes for sure about like how the business is doing and what we're changing. And I'm always happy and to talk about the experience of just what we went through. I got a lot of questions whenever I share things vulnerably. I get a lot of DMs and I get a lot of messages, and I'm so grateful for it. Of course, a lot of it was congratulations, but there were a lot of women this week who reached out and said, I'm just curious if you're open to it. Were you doing IVF, and how long did it take you to get pregnant? And I know you've been struggling and this, that, and the other. And again, I don't mean to upset anybody. We did not do IVF. It was natural. And it was never difficult for us to get pregnant. All 3 pregnancies were on the first or second try. I was losing the babies. And for me, I needed a lot of space in between trying. There was just a lot of mental and emotional healing that needed to happen with the ectopic. There was also months and months of physical healing that needed to happen before I was ever even cleared. So the timing of it just worked out that it happened to be spread out over 2 years. But a lot of questions were coming in, a lot of conversations were coming in. And so I want to keep the open door policy, because it is stuff that I just wish was a little bit more talked about, a little bit more. And it has become, right? It's so much less taboo today than I feel like it was years ago, whether it's loss or infertility or whatever IVF, like people are so much more open to it than they used to be. But I also think it's interesting when we go, how much do we want to share? How much do we need to share? Because there was a point in time where this chapter was very sacred. I think it is still very sacred. And it wasn't shared with thousands of people on the internet or the world, right? It's like, it's just an interesting thing, right? And I'm like so grateful to be sharing it for so many reasons, but there are elements of it too that I'm like, it's sacred, it's mine. And we're not choosing to find out the sex. We're going to do the original OG gender reveal. You had a surprise. So there's just, it's wild. People have so many opinions about things too. So I hope that you're open to the conversation. Again, we're not going to switch all the content to it, but there's definitely things that I think are really important to talk about, and obviously how it relates to the business as well. And I would love to continue having the conversation so that I can be the type of woman who does, whether it's inspire or motivate or just give a little bit of hope or relatability or make you feel seen or heard or understood, any of that's really what it's all about. So I will likely, like I said, do more of these episodes on sort of just pregnancy and where we're at and the business and stuff like that. But this one's really just to come out and say, yeah, it's official. We're 25 weeks. This baby is coming sooner rather than later. So we'll have a little nugget in September, so long as everything goes well. And it's really, really, really exciting. And I'm just so grateful for all of your love. We received so much love this week. The baby received so much love this week. And I could cry just thinking about it. So thank you. I love you. And I'm sending you so much love. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.